Life of David Livingston, Part 15. Having remained at the Makolo capital for about 2 months, Dr. Livingston departed hence for the east coast of Africa on the 3rd of November. He was accompanied by Sekeletu and about 200 followers, and whenever they stopped in the Makolo country, every arrangement for their hospitable entertainment was found to be provided for. It was now in his voyage down the Zambezi that Dr. Livingston visited the great falls of the river and named them after the reigning sovereign of England, Victoria. These being among the most remarkable of the many notable scenes in Africa can only be adequately described in the graphic words of the explorer, who here goes on into more heroics, as it were, than in almost any other portion of his great work. Quote, after 20 miles sail from Calais, we came in sight of it for the first time, of the columns of vapor appropriately called smoke, rising at a distance of 5 to 6 miles, exactly as when large tracts of grass are burned in Africa. 5 columns now arose, and bending in the direction of the wind, they seemed placed alongside against the low ridge covered with trees. The tops of the columns at this distance appeared to mingle with the clouds. They were white below, and higher up became dark, so as to simulate smoke very closely. The whole scene was extremely beautiful. The banks and islands dotted over the river are adorned with sylvan vegetation and of great variety of color and form. At the period of our visit, several trees were spangled over with blossoms. Trees have each their own physiognomy. There, towering over all, stands the great blurry baobab, each of whose enormous arms would form the trunk of a large tree, besides groups of graceful palms, which, with their feathery shaped leaves depicted on the sky, lend their beauty to the scene. As a hieroglyphic, they always mean far from home, for one can never get over their foreign air in a picture or landscape. The silvery mahonono, which in the tropics is in form like the cedar of Lebanon, stands in pleasing contrast with the dark color of the matsori, whose cypress form is dotted over at present with its pleasant scarlet fruit. Some trees resemble the great spreading oak. Others assume the character of our own elms and chestnuts. But no one can imagine the beauty and view from anything witnessed in England. It has never been seen before by European eyes, but scenes so lovely must have been gazed upon by angels in their flight. The only want felt is that of mountains in the background. The falls are bounded on 3 sides by ridges 300 and 400 feet in height, which are covered with forest, with the red soil appearing through the trees. When about half a mile from the falls, I left the canoe by which we had come down thus far, and embarked in a lighter one, with men well acquainted with the rapids, who, by passing down the center of the stream in the eddies and still places caused by many jutting rocks, who by passing down the center of the stream in the eddies and still places caused by many jutting rocks, brought me to an island situated in the middle of the river and on the edge of the lip over which the water rolls. In coming hither, there was danger of being swept down by the streams which rushed along on each side of the island. But the river was now low, and we sailed where it was totally impossible to go when the water was high. But though we had reached the island and were within a few yards of the spot in view from which would solve the whole problem, I believe that no one could perceive where the vast body of water went. It seemed to lose itself in the earth, the opposite lip of the fissure into which it disappeared being only 8 feet distant, At least I did not comprehend it until, creeping with awe on the verge, I peered down into the large rent which had been made from the bank to bank of the broadband Zambezi, and saw that a stream of 1,000 yards broad leaped down 100 feet and then became suddenly compressed into a space of 15 or 20 yards. The entire falls are simply a crack made in the hard basaltic rock from the right to the left bank of the Zambezi, and the prolonged from the left bank away through 30-40 miles of hills. If one imagines the Thames filled with low tree-covered hills immediately beyond the tunnel, extending as far as Gravesend, the bend of black basaltic rock instead of London mud, and a fissure made therein from one end of the tunnel to the other, down through the keystones of the arch, and prolonged from left end of the tunnel through 30 miles of hills, the pathway being 100 feet down from the bed of the river instead of what it is, with the lips of the fissures from 80 to 100 feet apart. Then fancy the Thames leaping boldly into a gulf and forced there to change its direction and flow from the right to the left bank, and then rush boiling and roaring through the hills. He may have some idea of what takes place at this, the most wonderful sight I witnessed in Africa. In looking down into the fissure on the right of the island, one sees nothing but a dense white cloud, which at the time we witnessed the spot had two bright rainbows on it. From this cloud rushed up a great jet of vapor exactly like steam, and it mounted 200-300 feet high. There, condensing, it changed its hue to that of dark smoke, and came back in a constant shower, which soon wetted us to the skin. This shower falls chiefly on the opposite side of the fissure, and a few yards back from the lip of there stands a straight hedge of evergreen trees, whose leaves are always wet. From their roots a number of little rills run back to the gulf, but as they flow down the steep wall there, the column of vapor, on its account, licks them up clean off the rock, and always they mount again. They are constantly running down, but never reach the bottom. On the left of the island, we see the water at the bottom, a white rolling mass moving away to the prolongation of the fissure, which branches off near the left bank of the river. A piece of the rock has fallen off a spot on the left of the island and juts out from the water below, and from it I judged the distance which the water falls to be about 100 feet. The walls of this gigantic crack are perpendicular and composed of one homogeneous mass of rock. The edge of that side over which the water falls is worn off 2 or 3 feet, and pieces have fallen away so as to give it somewhat of a serrated appearance. That over which the water does not fall is quite straight, except at the left corner, where a rent appears and a piece seems inclined to fall off. Upon the whole, it is nearly in the state in which it was left at the period of its formation. The rock is dark brown in color, except about every 10 feet the bottom, which is discolored by the annual rise of the water to that of greater height. On the left side of the island we have a great view of the mass of water which causes one of the columns of vapor to ascend, as it leaps quite clear of the rock and forms a thick unbroken fleece all the way to the bottom. Its witnesses give the idea of snow, a sight I had not seen for many days. As it broke into pieces of water all rushing on it in the same direction, each gave off several rays of foam, exactly as bits of steel when burned in oxygen gas give off rays and sparks. The snow-white sheet seemed like myriads of small comets rushing on in one direction, each of which left behind its nucleus ray in rays of foam. I never saw the appearance referred to noticed elsewhere. It seemed to be the effect of the mass of water leaping at once clear of the rock and but slowly breaking up into spray. I have mentioned that we saw 5 columns of vapor ascending from the strange abyss. They are evidently formed by the compression of suffered by the force of the water upon water's own fall into an unyielding wedge-shaped space. Of the 5 columns, 2 of the right and 1 on the left of the island were the largest, and the streams which formed them seemed each to exceed in size the falls of the Clyde at Stonebrise, when that river is in flood. This was the period of low water in the Liambai, but as far as I could guess, there was a flow of 500 or 600 yards of water, which at the edge of the fall seemed at least 3 feet deep. From the falls, the explorer returned up the river to Kalai, where on November 20th he bade adieu to Sekeletu and the Makololo, and with a company of 114 men, furnished by generous chief as escort to carry tusks to the east coast, struck out on his long journey, first going northward for several hundred miles, leaving the Zambezi far to his right. The journey for a long distance lay through the country of the Batoka. All the tribes of these people have the custom of knocking out their front upper teeth when their individuals arrive at the age of puberty. This is true of both males and females. The under teeth, in consequence, grow long and project outwards, giving the people a hideous appearance, especially when they laugh. Sebetinai, with all his power, was unable to eradicate this practice. The women are very scantily clothed, but the men go about in puris naturalibus, and without the smallest sense of shame. Their mode of salutation is emphatic but singular. They throw themselves on their backs on the ground, and they throw themselves on their backs on the ground, and rolling from side to side, slap the outside of their thighs, and expressive of thankfulness and welcome, and uttering Kinabamba, Kinabama, Kinabamba. The chief of the Batoka was Manze, who came one Sunday wrapped in an extemporized shawl, and saluted the travelers by rolling, clapping, and singing out King Bomba. Like all the rest of them, these people, though having many barbarous and repulsive customs, were friendly and in their savage way quite hospitable. While passing through the country of the Batoka, the travelers were visited by a number of Bashu Kulompo, a tribe who live to the northward. They wear their hair in immense cones, most of which are constructed straight up from the head, but some are constructed obliquely. To keep these ornaments in order must require much attention, as much attention as a modern belle gives to headdress, chignon, braid, waterfall, and all. But it may be claimed as a truth as a general truth applying to all races of mankind that much attention is given to the external portions of the head. Yes, it might be said that.